Hi, my name is Adrian. I'm from Durango. I have been supporting Sunderland since 2008. How are the lights?
Kiefer Moore versus Anthony Patterson. Patterson saves! Patterson saves! Oh, it's a mistake! And Mayenda's in here for Sunderland! It's Eliezer Mayenda! Yes! There it is! Oh, mistake there, and Sunderland could be in. Mayenda feeding a ball into Isidor, just gets away from him. He goes again though! Isidor shoots! Yes! Wilson Isidor!
Hello and welcome to Black Cats Chat, the international fans podcast for Sunderland AFC. My name is Lee Thirkell. I'm from the Bilbao Black Cats, and today I'm joined by two new guests once again. We've got Martin Bates from Toronto in Canada. He's from the SAFC NASA branch. Good afternoon to you, Martin, in Toronto.
How are you? Good, great to be on finally.
Well, it's nice to have you, mate, finally as well. And it's a good day, isn't it, after last night?
Absolutely.
And I'm also joined for the first time by Sunderland fan in Craig. You have to forgive me if I get this wrong, but I think it's Sollentuna in Sweden.
Yes, but that's really Stockholm. It's a suburb of Stockholm in Sweden. So,
right.
I'm in the capital here, pretty much. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, delighted you can join us, Craig, for the first time. Right. So, as we said, we won last night against Sheff Utd 2-1 at home in front of 42,000. We're going to talk about that soon, but first we'll get the Sunderland stories. Martin, would you like to go first, please?
Sure, my pleasure. So for those who don't know me, my name's Martin Bates. I've lived in Toronto basically all my life, all within basically half an hour of the downtown Toronto. So I've never lived in Sunderland, but being a Sunderland fan was bred into me from both my parents. My mom and dad, they emigrated from Pennywell in '67, had me a couple of years later. And being an only child and everything, it was always bred into me. Following them back in the day was really interesting because obviously before internet and that, I was fortunate enough to go over to Sunderland quite often as a kid from the mid 70s through pretty well towards the end of the 80s, 90s. I would go over and spend 2 to 3 weeks over there in Sunderland with my grandparents and aunts and uncles and cousins and all that. But, unfortunately, they've all passed away other than a couple of cousins that are still there. So I've got to know and know the city and stuff fairly well over there. Following it was interesting because back in the day before the internet, as I said, we could only get little scores here and there in the newspaper, on the radio. I remember my dad always putting the radio broadcast on about 12:30 on a Saturday afternoon, listening to all the scores and the classic Nick Guy's voice. I can't remember who it was. Just rhyming off all the scores in a very monotone, robotic type way. And my dad checking his pool sheets that he ran at his place where he worked at Ford. And then I get you back. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but they used to have this blue paper for writing letters that was always airmail. Mm-hmm. And every time I'd see them come in, I'd get excited because my granddad had wrote a letter to my mom. And at the bottom of it was always, "Hi, Martin, the lads did this or that or whatever." And I'd always get a little game recap from that. And this was before I could read, obviously. And then obviously I started reading it once I could learn to read. I loved it. And it was great getting those little letters. So that was good. I am fortunate enough now that I do get over quite often. I get over at least once a year. Actually, in 2024, last year, I was over. I saw 5 live games in the calendar year. With International Fans Day, I attend all the time since its beginning, and I won't miss out any of them. I absolutely love that. I've gotten to meet so many fantastic people through the International Fans Day. It's just been great. And I keep in touch with them through social media and whatnot. And we talk and I see them all the time when I go over there. As for my supporters branch here, as you mentioned, I am a part of the NASA branch. We're a Toronto-based area. We cover a large area here. We have people stretching, 50, 60, 70 miles either side of Toronto that will drive in and whatnot into the Toronto area. Sometimes we go to Oakville, this place called the Temple Bar, which is really, really good place. It's kind of in the middle of us and Niagara Falls, so we get people out there. And we meet up pretty well every opportunity we can get. The only ones we don't do are sort of the midweek ones, just because Toronto traffic in midweek and trying to get downtown is an absolute nightmare. But the weekend ones work out well because it's a 10 a.m. kickoff for us here, generally, if it's a 3 p.m. kickoff there. and that works great. One of my favorite memories of being in the Sunderland branch here was back in 2015 when Sunderland did a tour of North America. They started on the West Coast, and then they had actually 3 days in Toronto. And at that time, I was fortunate enough to be part of the Toronto area representation for NASA and helped arrange through the club the meetings up with the team that day. We had 3 days with Sunderland fans from all over here in Toronto. On the Monday night, we met at a place called Scallywags that no longer exists. The entire first team, Dick Avocat, Kevin Ball was there, Ellis Short was there. You had to be a member of the branch, of a registered branch, to get in. We got to meet all the first team. All the food and drink was paid for by Sunderland and Ellis Short, which is probably why we all had a big debt with us, because we drank a lot of beer and ate a lot of food that day. Mainly drank a lot of beer, but that was wonderful. There's a video. My friend Ken from the Toronto area here. We were fortunate enough to get interviewed by Sunderland, and somewhere on YouTube or on the Sunderland site, there's an actual video of us being interviewed. They had a whole recap of the whole Toronto area trip, and that was great. And then that was on the Monday. Tuesday, we just had a Sunderland gathering after. Stevie Caldwell, one of the former players, joined us because he was Toronto based, played for Toronto FC for a bit, and did the commentary. And then the Wednesday, we all took over this local pub called Brazenhead, which is right close to the ground where they played Toronto FC. It was just covered in red and white. Everybody was in there with Sunderland fans. We had flags and everything draped over all the balconies and whatnot. And then we all sort of marched en masse from Brazenhead over to Toronto, to BMO, to play Toronto FC. And I don't think the Toronto FC fans realized what was coming when they just heard us singing through the little tunnel that you have to go through underneath the ground. It was fantastic. It was absolutely brilliant. So that's kind of my Sunderland story. And like I said, I've been fortunate enough to be over there. I've been to 2 cup finals at Wembley, been to the Man City one, and I was at the Pompey one. And one of the questions that we were talking about earlier was what was my favorite Sunderland moment. My first match that I actually remember attending was way back in 2003 when we played Chelsea, and Sean Thornton scored an absolute cracking goal, volley, and put us up 1-0. We ended up losing 2-1. That was my favorite first game I remember being at the stadium. And of course, the favorite moment that I've had, although there's been so many of them, would have to be McGeady's equalizer against Pompey at Wembley. Being in the Sunderland end, 15, 20 rows from the pitch. It was just incredible. The noise when he went in, that still gives me goosebumps to this day thinking about it. It's just unbelievable. So
I was there as well, Martin. I was there as well that day, and when the free kick went in, and then when the goal went in the last second, it was class, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I actually timed it. It was 76 hours from the time I left the pub on the Friday to the time in Bramalea here, or Bolton actually. It was 76 hours from the time I left my pub here, went to the airport, flew to London, went to the game, flew back, and I was back in the pub 76 hours. That's how long it took me for my trip over.
Blimey. Right. And another thing, Martin, is that some fans might remember you from being on the pitch. Was it 2022 at halftime?
I've been on the pitch every year.
Yeah.
It was 2020 where I fell on my arse and got that what I call it the infamous but famous picture of me with the Canadian flag on my back. So I've been fortunate enough to do every International Fans Day halftime challenge. I look forward to doing it again in 2025. Hopefully, if they'll have me again.
I'm sure they will. Thanks a lot, Martin. That's brilliant. Right, Craig, it's your turn, mate. How was your story?
Well, yeah, I mean, I moved to Stockholm in Sweden in 2015. So you could say for the last 9 years or so, I've been trying to spread the word. And obviously, Sunderland Till I Die has helped that quite a lot. But there's quite a big Premier League following over here. So it's a ongoing battle, let me say. But I have got friends over here who now follow Sunderland and go over to games, even with some of my mates. So I think we're well regarded as a club, as we know with our neighbours. I think they've got a lot of bad press over the last couple of years in particular, and I think we've got a good reputation all around the world, let's face it. And I definitely think we're respected over here. That's for sure. So I've been here for 9 years, and my first Sunderland game was actually in the 83-84 season. Gary Rowell scored that day, so that tells you how long ago that was. My first away game was the FA Cup third round in 1984 at Bolton Wanderers. So from then, I probably didn't miss a home game for the best part of 20 years, really, after that. And then certainly by the late 90s, I was almost at every away game as well by that point, and that kind of coincided with the Quinn Phillips era. But I've lived through the first third division season, and it didn't seem so bad at the time as a kid, but we were only in there 1 year. It's a big difference to what we've recently went through, of course. So it was not as bad as you would think the first time round, that's for sure. And my first trip to Wembley was 1985 for the Milk Cup final, and even in defeat, to be honest with you, that was kind of one of the most, the proudest days of being a Sunderland supporter. And anyone who wasn't around at that time or didn't support us at that time, I definitely recommend looking at that on YouTube, because we were fantastic that day as a club, really.
What was the date for that, Craig? It was April, wasn't it? Was it April?
It was March. It was middle of March, 1985. And I think what was really quite annoying as well about the whole thing was, we'd beat Norwich the week before away, and then we ended up losing the cup final, and we both got relegated. And, it was just a typical Sunderland day, really, that cup final. And it was the first of, many tears at Wembley for the next 6-7 occasions. And actually, when we won at Wembley in the playoff final against Wigan, my mates, between us, we had 4 kids there. And all 4 kids, it's the first time at Wembley. We won it their first time at Wembley. And I think they all thought, well, this is how it is. But that's not how it's been at all, actually, since 1985. So many Wembley visits over the years. And, my early heroes, certainly in that cup run in 84, 85, my early heroes would have been, Gary Bennett, Chris Turner. And then after that, it would have been, Marco, absolutely, was a, huge hero for anyone who lived through the late 80s, early 90s till he left. And then, the 90s, there was a few cult heroes like Martin Smith and maybe Craig Russell, but they were few and far between in the 90s. And then, obviously, as I said, the Quinn Phillips era was incredible. I was at both the 2-1s in Newcastle, the one in the rain and the one where Tommy saved Shearer's penalty, and they were great times. And I think despite the issues we've had over the last 15, 20 years, I just feel really good about this current crop of players. And I think last night was a good example of that. I think we're very much heading in the right direction now, and in a possibly sustainable way. And I feel very, very excited about the next few years, and really enjoying seeing these young lads develop, and probably no more so than what we seen last night, really.
Yep. And how often you get over, mate, to watch games nowadays?
So as a rule, I'd probably say maybe about 2 or 3 seasons. As it turns out, I've not been there this season, but I'm there for the whole game, the whole home game in February. And I'm hoping to be there for at least 1 or 2 more games between now and the end of the season, maybe Norwich away. So generally 2 or 3 times a season. It might actually come that little bit easier next year, because there's a couple of changes in the flight schedule in Newcastle, which help.
Mm-hmm.
So and my lad, he's 9 now, and he's sitting watching the match last night with a Lugo 9 shirt on and that, and he's really getting the bug now,
Yep.
Yeah, I'm thinking of getting over to the Norwich game as well. That's a Tuesday before International Fans Day in April. So
Okay.
I'm probably going to be at the Norwich away game as well.
Yeah, well, I think for supporters like ourselves, I mean, they've got West Brom on the Saturday, which would be, typically difficult to get tickets for. But because Norwich is Tuesday night, just that maybe it's a little bit easier to get all the tickets. I mean, normally you kind of find a way, but it's become more and more difficult with tickets for supporters like ourselves, because, teams like QPR haven't reduced allocations and them sort of things. So Norwich away hopefully will be a possibility.
Brilliant, mate. Well, I hope you get over, and I hope that Martin and Craig, you can both have a pint together in Norwich.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah.
that would be fantastic.
I think I'll be over maybe for the Blackburn game, which is like Easter period, I think, just after Easter or something like that, April. Martin, you might have gone home by then.
No, I was going to say, don't talk about Blackburn around around the Easter period. I was at the Blackburn 5-1 game on Good Friday this year, or 2024, and that was the first game I was there for when I was there for the International Fans Day, and what a hiding that was.
Disaster.
Sorry about that. I'll just
Yeah.
call them Rovers.
Yeah.
All right, Craig, thanks for that, mate. Right, Martin, on to the match last night, 2-1 against Sheffield United, who I think were third at that moment. Couple of changes then. We had Paddy Roberts come back in for Alexic, which was probably expected. Eliezer in for Serkin, which I thought was a good decision because Serkin's been a bit out of form since he came back from injury. And then the key things were Mayenda kept his place after a bad 2 games or poor 2 games, and now she's kept his place. So how did that lineup come across to you, Martin, when you saw it?
I was definitely happy with it. I was fine with it. Mayenda he's so frustrating because he's got all the talent in the world, and the breakaway he missed the other week, and then the header that he missed a couple days ago, are just so frustrating because those are big points that are dropped on basically schoolboy errors, in my opinion. Those were, and then he goes and does something like he did last night because he had the pace and he actually controlled it and took it around the keeper and scored. Like, so the fact that Labrie kept him in the game, I thought showed a bit of courage because a lot of people would have pulled him out after those 2 mistakes. But generally, I was happy with that. The injuries are killing us. Like it, I was there when Chris Rigg came off on that Tuesday night a couple of weeks ago against Bristol, and he has not featured since, obviously. It's just the injuries are killing us. Tommy Watson going down, and we got to deal with what we got. And hopefully, those guys coming back soon. I'm not sure exactly on the timelines, and obviously on either, but it'll feel almost like a new signing, like a January signing when you think about it. Those guys coming back.
Yeah, absolutely.
And all possibly come back roughly around the same time potentially as well. So it could really push us on a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's only Tommy Watson who's kind of like the longer of the ones that are injured, no? Because Salis is back in training. I think Brown and Mundell must be quite close as well. So hopefully, yeah. What did you think about Elise in for Serkin, Craig?
Well, it's strange because at first I just presumed it was a little bit of a rotation thing, but I was just trying to get my head around a little bit the first 5-10 minutes how they were setting up, and when it became obvious that they were kind of playing more towards an old-fashioned 4-4-2, really, the first thing about just answering your question there is that I think Serkin is a really good player in a back three, but I don't think he's the quickest. And I think if you're playing 4 at the back, then I would have Elise in over him every day, quite honestly, because he hasn't showed it so much this season possibly because of his fitness, but Elise can get up and down that line defensively and attacking. And I really think Dennis Serkin's a Premier League player in a back three, but there's a few times this season that people go past him when he's an out and out left back,
Yeah. Yeah, I think like defensively, that's where he's like his issues are. I think, personally, I think he would be good as a wing back because I think if he goes on the overlap and he can put decent balls in. But I mean, I thought the decision made sense because he hasn't had a good period recently since he came back from his injury. Elise had a good start of the season at centre back. I don't think he's like the long-term solution for left back, but I think for a game just to give Serkin a rest, I think it made sense. Martin Aushish, once again, had a good game. That's a couple of games in a row. What do you think about him?
I like the pace and the quickness he is, and I think that he is a change. And he's sort of an unknown quantity because I don't think to use an American term here, they don't have film on him, like much game film on him to study, to be honest with you. And I think he's got a bit of a bag of tricks, and he seems to always want to get forward, which I think is really refreshing, and not always just pass it back. He seems to always have an eye to play the ball and move it quick.
Yeah, and he's got that trickery, but I think he's also got a nice turn of speed that I didn't expect.
Yes,
I saw a couple of times last night where he basically played the pass and it's like, wow, where did that come from?
Yeah,
it was like Sonic getting a boost or something like that. And you mentioned there he's got that trickery, and last night there was one pass where he played where he was just on the wing and he was looking for a ball, and instead of just playing it on the floor, he chipped it over.
Yeah,
and I think that's something that none of the other players normally do. Normally, our players aren't that kind of crafty. So I think it's nice to see that as well. Do you think he'll stay? Or do you think he's off?
That's to be honest with you, that's something I really don't know a heck of a lot about all who's got contracts here and all that stuff. What's the old saying? Do you fall in love with lone players? And we've seen how that's come out in the past. So I'm not really sure how to answer that, to be honest.
Yeah. And Craig, it was a slow start then. The first 10 minutes we struggled to get into the game, but after that we got back into it and we had a couple of chances. But then that penalty was a sucker punch, wasn't it?
It was a bit really. Yeah, I mean, it was a slow start, and I think even after the penalty, I think it just took a little while for us to get that lift. The crowd, the crowd were up for it after Pato saved the penalty, but I think it still took to the first goal before we really grew in confidence, and I do think against these teams, we had spells in the Leeds home game where, they really dominated possession. I think the difference was, I think we had a bit more class about us last night. I really do. I think going forward, we were a genuine threat where they kind of huffed and puffed a bit. And I think once we got to grips with that a little bit, and the first goal being a big difference, of course, I think we just grew in confidence. And I just felt in general throughout the game, we looked the classier team, the more clinical, even though we didn't have much of the ball. So it was a slow start, as we've seen a lot lately. I think every manager in the country is really trying to work out how they can get their team to start from minute one. And we are struggling with that at the moment. But the character that they're showing, whether they go a goal down or whether they start slowly like they did last night, the character in this group of lads, it's fantastic. It's great to see.
Well, you mentioned their possession. We only had 34% possession last night. But on the other hand, right, here's some stats for you. We had 11 shots to their 6. 6 of them were on one target for us, and only 3 for them. So although we didn't have possession, we still had plenty of chances, didn't we, Martin?
Definitely.
We're going forward, like going through the middle of the park, and just like what you said earlier there about the Eliezer coming in instead of Thirkell. I think what's been missed a little bit with that formation is because we went towards a kind of 4-4-2, if you like, it really exposed their 2 centre halves. So I think there was a lot into his thinking behind that team last night, and it was probably maybe after the game where you realise he's done a bit of a job on them, I think.
Yeah, a bit of a masterclass, wasn't it? Martin, do you think the penalty was a bit soft? Because, listen, 09 does grab his shirt, but the way he fell down, he made a bit of a meal of it, didn't he?
He's a big, strong boy, more, and you're going to blame him for going down when you get his shirt pulled? No, it was a penalty, I think, and thank God he missed it, because I think I read some of the comments obviously after the game, and obviously I watched him myself play, and he just seemed. I'm glad we didn't sign that guy, because I think he's I just don't rate him, and I'm glad he missed a penalty. I'm glad Pato saved it, but I definitely think it was a penalty in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think we'd be really disappointed pulling our hair out if we'd have signed him. I know a lot of people wanted to sign him and ultimately helped get Ipswich promoted, but I couldn't agree with you more, Martin. I think the guy's a bit of a fraud, to be honest with you. I think he's.
Yeah, he could have been this season's Bradley Dack, couldn't he? So we've dodged one there, haven't we? But yeah, we didn't get a similar penalty to that last week, did we not? When Mepham got the same type of challenge, took back, and that was worse. Exactly. But anyway, Patter saved the penalty. I think that's his 4th penalty save now, or 5th penalty save in the last couple of seasons. So he's doing well with them. And then Martin, Mayenda's goal, it basically came from nothing, didn't it? It was just like a long
100%.
ball, up and under, and all you got was like Mayenda running at pace at the defender, put him under pressure, missed control, and he's in.
That's right. Unbelievable. And it's just, again, I hate to go back to the other day, but when he had basically the exact same thing, break away from from basically halfway, and he didn't put it away. But this time he did. And again, you got to take those chances when they come to you, because you don't think they're going to get them. They're surprised. Obviously, we didn't do anything to really get that thing. It was a defender error, but we pounced on it and made it count. That's the key. Make it count when you get your chances.
And I think, Craig, the key difference to the chance that he took last night and the one against Stoke, Blackburn. Yeah, Blackburn's the one. Is that I don't know if you saw the replay, but you see him look up just before he's about to kick.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, I see. Okay.
And basically against Blackburn, he just didn't. He didn't look up. His head was down, and that's why he basically ran to the keeper. But last night he looked up and he said, "Okay, I've got time. I'm going to place it." And it was a good finish, wasn't it? Very composed.
He showed a lot of composure, and from his first touch to his last, I mean, it was, he had a lot of time to think about it. And I mean, over the last couple of games, I've probably been a little bit too critical of course, he's missed easy chances. And you look at the guy, he's 19. He's just one of them we're going to have to persevere with and be patient with, I think, and hopefully they'll reap the rewards. But for fair play to him last night.
Yeah, Martin, I mean, you mentioned before he's a big, strong lad and he's got bundles of pace. I just think sometimes he's too reserved. He's a bit too scared to use it, isn't he? He's very
Yes,
apprehensive.
100%. Have confidence in yourself the way he did last night. Hopefully that's going to bring him out of his shell, because it was, a gilt-edged chance and he took it. And you just got to have faith in yourself. And as you say, he is so young. It's just hopefully going to come in time where he just gets to feel more and more comfortable.
Yeah. And then, well, we got a bit of a sucker punch soon after because Sheff Utd got an equaliser. It came from nothing as well. It was just like blasted into the box by Gustavo Hamer. And it was one of those, Martin, where sometimes it goes your way and sometimes it doesn't. No, it was a difficult one to deal with for 09, wasn't it? No blame attached to him for that, right?
No, he tried to clear it. You got to try to clear it, and just, it came at him in such pace, and unfortunately the angles were wrong and it went in our net.
Yeah. And then Craig, soon after, Isidor showed his magic, his Thierry Henry esque skills. But if you notice the build up to that goal, it was the pressing of Paddy Roberts on the right hand side. He basically pressed the guy, won the ball back, played in Mayenda. Mayenda played it to Isidor. Didn't have the best of first touches, but then when he got the ball finally, that change of speed to get past him, it was just like watching Thierry Henry, wasn't it?
Oh, he's fantastic. I love the guy, and I think he also, the goal he scored against Hull had a similarity where he's made his run, then he stopped, slowed the guy up a bit, and then he's went again. And over that first yard, he's quicker than most. And I mean, he just took it fantastic, because even the angle was against him, to be fair, and he's buried it. So I think he's great, and he's just such a natural finisher. We've had so many players over the years that have looked amazing on YouTube, and we buy them and they're terrible. And I seen a lot of him where I thought, this guy's going to score. He's going to score goals. He's just a great finisher. And I don't think he lets us down on the left wing either so much. But he's got a goal in him, hasn't he? Just out of nothing generally. He's fantastic.
Martin, like some people on social media and the fans forum, they've been saying that they don't think Isidor's the answer for the striking position. I think he is.
I think that the fans they're too, either everything is great or it's doom and gloom and a disaster. You got to take the rough with the smooth, and there are going to be some patches where people like Mayenda and Isidor they'll miss chances. But I think I'm really happy with him. He seems to love playing for the club. He seems to be passionate. He seems, I don't know if you saw him the other day lighting the Christmas lights or something in Keele Square. I saw that on video and whatnot. And he seems to just love the crowd and be very, very happy to be playing. And he's showing it. And, he's getting results. He's scoring. Sure, obviously, we'd like more goals, but I don't think you can complain about his goal return right now.
No, he's got, 7 goals this season? But I think as a forward, you always need to be confident. And I think he's got bags of that, hasn't he?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
so,
I think Martin as well at the end there when he goes over singing to the fans. I think when you live abroad, those are the moments you really. I wish I was there, because he's he's really engaged with the fans, and I hope he's here for a long time to come.
Yeah. Craig, Sheff Utd threw lots of bodies at us, lots of balls into the box. We defended everything. Bit of an unsung hero last night was Anthony Patterson, because he saved the penalty, but he also put his body in the way, didn't he, with quite a few shots.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean the one in the last minute, to be fair, it wasn't just a sign of relief. He's going to take a, as they said in the commentary, he's going to take a kicking there, come for that ball, and he could easily drop it.
Yeah,
and he's a top keeper for me. I think obviously people look a lot of his kicking or what he does with the ball at his feet a little bit, and of course that's a huge part of the game. And he was a bit nervy at times last night there, but as an out-and-out shot stopper, he's as good as anything in this league, that's for sure. And I think he's one of those that will go on to have a really, really good career, really. And I think, if anything, last night was a good example of that. He's when the chips are down, I'd rather have him in goal than most of the keepers in this league.
Yeah. Martin, we did only have 34% possession last night, which means that we didn't play along the back or out from the back as much. It was pretty direct, get the ball up front. I think that suited us, didn't it? Because in recent games, we do kind of get ourselves into a pickle, don't we?
100%. The way when we keep trying to play out and out and out, I get that you want to keep possession and you don't want to just kick the ball straight at the park. But I think there's also a time where you got to say, okay, this isn't working, and we got to move the ball a bit quicker, and it'll be a little bit more direct. There are times when I was watching some of the games over the holiday period and before that, they're trying to play it out and trying to play it out. Even I think last night there was a chance when Patterson almost got caught right in the thing by Brewster, I think it was, right in the middle of the net.
Yeah.
Like those are things that should never ever happen, but they do, and they unfortunately happen a little bit more frequently for us, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Everything works great in theory. It's just sometimes you got to adjust if it's not working.
Yep, absolutely. Right, Craig, we've got a dilemma because Mepham is pretty much number one, nailed on to be centre back. But then when Dan Ballard comes back, does he come back in for O'Nien? Does O'Nien keep his place? Had a bit of a rough night last night, Luke O'Nien. What do you think?
I think it's tough, and I think it's rarely a decision. We've got a lot of defenders, of course we have. I think in the Championship, you're going to get your injuries, you're going to get your suspension. So do you ever really play your so-called, first 11? I think going on from what you've just said about the way we pass the ball around at the back, it probably suits Luke a lot better than Dan Ballard if we were going to play that way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a tough one. If you want out-and-out defenders, of course you'd pick Dan Ballard over Luke, I think, any day. But we haven't got enough ability on the ball if we're going to do that at that end of the pitch. I mean, I think Daniel and Job, they are much better facing the other way. If they're facing their own goal, they're not that comfortable with the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And if your defenders aren't comfortable with the ball either, well, maybe it is best to play direct like we did last night,
Mm-hmm.
The first 10 minutes last night was really, really difficult getting that ball out from the back. It was just not working at all. So is Luke in the team a little bit for that side of him? Because he's got a good pass on him. He's Dan Ballard's, his second touch is often a tackle. As much as I like the guy, So I think it's all about how we want to play against a certain opponent rather than who is the best back three or back four, but all in all, I'd like us to be just that little bit more direct, because when we're in the other half of the pitch, we can play our football and we do look good.
Mm-hmm.
But in our own half, it's a bit nervy at times, to be fair.
Yeah. Well, Martin, this Sunday we've got Portsmouth at home. Portsmouth have got a mixed bag of results recently. I don't know if you've checked them out, but they won against Swansea 4-0. Then they lost against Bristol City away 3-0. Then they lost against Watford 2-1 away. Then they beat Coventry at home 4-1. And then they got beat off Derby 4-0. So they either win by a lot of goals or they get tonked.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like it's feast or famine for them going forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pompey, I don't know. There's something about that team. I just don't like them. Obviously I was losing to them on the penalties in the cup final a few years ago. Was very disappointing. I hope they don't bring that guy with all the bloody tattoos. He's a bit of a joke, but we got to be beating the teams that we should be beating. I think it's clear to say that our team is capable enough of beating anybody in that league when they're on form. But sometimes we just play down to our opponents and it costs us. Like, we should be getting wins, not draws, and coming back from behind and starting slow and then having to come back for the way we have in all the last 7 games.
Yeah,
we got to beat these guys that are down the bottom. We got to beat these guys.
Well, I mean, they're currently 21st, right? And they haven't won away from home since October the 19th, which is when they beat Queen's Park Rangers 2-1. So you'd like to think that we should be going in there confident, right?
Yeah, I would love to sit down on Sunday, like Sunday morning, because it's Sunday morning my time, 10 a.m., and sit down and have my feet up and watch a nice 3-0 comfortable win where we could maybe use some extra subs, save some legs and stuff like that. But it just doesn't seem to be the Sunderland way. Give us 3-0 up and just call it a day. I would love to see that happen.
Yeah. What do you think? Predictions, Martin?
I'm going to go 3-0.
3-0, Craig?
Yeah.
I think about the same. Yeah, I think 3-0. I think they were really poor when we played them at their place. I know they've picked up a little bit since, like as you said, but along with saying maybe Oxford and Derby, they're definitely one of the worst teams we played this season. So it's all in the day. But I'd be disappointed if we don't win by at least a couple of goals, to be honest. And
Agreed.
And I wouldn't normally
Agreed.
say that, but I'm very, very confident for Sunday.
Do you think he'll go with the same formation, Martin?
I hope so. I hope so, to be honest with you, because it worked. Like as you say, you look at possession stats and all that kind of stuff, and here in North America, you can make stats say whatever you want them to say. To be honest with you, so it's all about the team performance. Just go there, beat them, and the stats can be what they want as long as you get the win and you look good doing it. And sometimes you don't look good doing it. Just get the win.
Yep, we'll see. Right, guys, we'll wrap it up there because Martin and Craig, I know that you want to watch the darts like me. So, yeah, hopefully we're back and Luke Littler to win later. But anyway, just wanted to say thank you guys for coming on this Tuesday afternoon. Was it Wednesday? Sorry, Thursday, isn't it? No,
Thursday.
I don't even know what day it is. I'm on holiday.
I know. I know. I'm back in my office. I'm not even sure what this place looks like anymore.
So yeah, Thursday afternoon, evening. Thanks a lot, guys, for coming on. Happy New Year to you both and all the fans and listeners around the world. How are the lads?
Away.
Hello, my name is Gabri. I'm from Sarnico, Italy, and I support Sunderland.